All right. Well, hello, folks, and welcome to this session of the SOC Analyst The Ride. This is kind of a bit of a hybrid between training, slideware, a lot of, you guys or you folks getting your hands on into the product, into our SIM product itself. So it's kind of a hybrid. I will try to keep the slides to a dull roar because you guys don't want to sit there and look at slides all, for the next hour and me blabbing on. So we're going to do a quick high level of what the offering is and then dive right into some of the lab work and some of the access into the interface itself. Today, I have two helpers, at least two helpers that I know of, Stephanie and Anna. So we do not have a QA panel. So your questions, put them in the chat, and my two assistants there will be more than happy to jump all over those. Or if you guys throw me a curveball and I can't answer one of the questions, I will call a friend or reach out to a friend, and Anna is going to step in and give me a hand there. So with that ground rule being set, my name is Scott Bauer. I am a senior technical marketing manager. That's a long term, but basically I have one foot on the technology side. I spent the majority of my career as an SC out in the field in the security space. I've been doing PCs and LAN network, et cetera, and security ever since it was a thing. I was one of the first ones in the Chicago area actually connecting PCs to a mainframe, and why the heck would you want to do that? So within Sumo, I am technical marketing. So I work with the engineering staff, I work with product marketing, I work with the product marketing folks, and create assets and deliverables on the technical marketing side. So enough about me. I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera off. We have a tight agenda. We have an hour or so. We have 3:06 now. Again, if you have any questions, pop them into the chat window itself. Also, if we could put in the chat window the lab guide, and you guys can throw that in there, or I can, whatever you guys want to do, we will move on. So I'm going to turn my camera off. If I can find my camera. There we go. All right. If you want closed caption, it is running. You can go ahead and click on that closed caption on your screen and you can get that information as we go along. So the agenda for today, we're doing a quick SIM overview. All right, so where does the SIM product or the Cloud SIM product fit within Sumo's portfolio? We'll talk at a high level, the value and the positioning of what this technology and this solution provides to our customers. We'll go through a guided investigation. And this is where we start getting a little bit, no, not starting. This is where we get more hands-on. You folks will be logging into the HUD, the SIM portal itself, and you're going to get the experience of working through the different panels, the different interface options, et cetera. After we get kind of done with a guided, we're going to let you guys go. You're going to go ahead and look around in there and look at some of the what we call insights, and I'll explain what those are. So we'll go through that, and we'll be answering questions all along as we go through there. At the end of the session, we'll be going through next steps. Hopefully after this 1 hour overview, you guys get enough interest and excitement that you actually want to go ahead and start looking at the full-blown certification tests or certification classes themselves. We have a foundation as well as an administration class for Cloud SIM now, which I believe is being covered at other points during Insight. So this is the common slide. If you've been to other sessions, this is kind of the foundation of where Sumo started, the value that we bring, and the data that we're able to pull in, ingest, and create value. So on the upper left-hand side, operational intelligence. So we're looking at all of your data coming in that you've assigned to us or you set up for us, and we're seeing to make sure that your applications are running. The meantime to identify and resolve issues. Maybe your checkout cart is not working correctly, or your billing is not working correctly, or somebody's, before they start complaining, maybe your web front end is laggy or slow, right? So with operational intelligence, we're taking your data in and ingesting that and providing you the needed analytics to keep ahead of what's going on in your digital environment. So based on that level of knowledge, that level of data coming into your environment, the next level coming in is security intelligence. Now, security intelligence is anomaly detection. It's looking at who's logging in with root access. Is somebody logged in, or is somebody logging in from the U.S. and then right very quick after from somewhere in Europe, right? So those types of metrics and those types of analysis, that's going to give us the base information for doing security in your environment. Business intelligence is, after the fact, right? So when we're looking at applications and you want to get like an after the fact, not a troubleshooting, but how is your business running? If you're placing ads and you're tracking and monitoring those, how does that align or transfer into your environment? So you can start doing what ifs. If I want to actually provide a different experience to my users, the business intelligence is going to give us that level of data. And because Sumo is born from the cloud, lives in the cloud, all of our stuff is running out of a cloud environment. We're multi-tenant in nature, which is table stakes, obviously. But because we're multi-tenant in nature, we have global intelligence. So if we're looking at things like from a security point of view, we're looking at global intelligence of other customers in the environment, and the data is anonymized, so we're not sharing. You can't see somebody else's data, but we can take a look at that and say, hey, based on what we've observed with other folks worldwide, how is your company, your instance, your environment in comparison? So those are the four kind of categories up on top. The next level down is the data. Right? And you guys know this, you live it every day. The amount of data that you have, it's almost too much data, right? So because we've been building our applications through microservices, through things like third-party apps or third-party integrations, and because cloud environments today is a shared responsibility, you have to rely on your cloud vendor to provide a certain level of security, but it's actually even more data now for you folks, because you need to be able to understand and see the security impact of activities, events in your area. Again, it's not just a shift to the cloud and then the cloud takes care of everything for you. And you guys know this. You gals know this. It's a shared security environment. So based in that area, we start taking a look at our analytics. So again, we pull in the data. We have a level of global intelligence with a multi-tenant of monitoring. Because it's built into the cloud, the way we ingest data, the way we scale up and scale down your environment, we do it for you. So a lot of the background plumbing that you may have had to use or deal with when it was on-prem or some of the very early cloud-based environments, we've not had that issue with the Sumo solution itself. We're very scalable. We dynamically can expand and reduce the resources being used through the elastic capabilities of rerun in AWS. Machine learning, right? So now we start taking a look at taking data and turning into something that is usable, right? Data by itself is not necessarily usable. So we have to be able to look at that data, use advanced analytics, use machine learning to actually add value to the data and provide the scalability and the performance of a cloud environment, being able to look at all that data. So to the human, we can actually pop out things like anomalies, right? So we'll be able to look at graphs and say, hey, I'm expecting a certain level of throughput or a certain level of performance or a certain number of people logging in, et cetera. We actually can get some anomaly detection in there as well. Based on that, we can actually tie into more security and monitoring. So if I'm taking a look at that, we're providing a solution that basically covers all of your people, right? So, a couple of years ago, DevSecOps was a huge thing. It's still important. We still hear a lot about it, but it's not the shiny new object or the shiny topic that a lot of vendors talked about a couple of years ago. But DevSecOps, tying into engineering, tying into your security environment, the Sumo environment is not regulated or limited by the number of users coming in. So we can actually give the appropriate access to your specific folks within your environment, the different portions of this, the environment itself. Is it a SecOps person? Is it an engineer? Is it a developer, et cetera? Now, based on this, because we're in the cloud, we have to be very, very careful, again, shared security environment with compliance. So on the lower right-hand side, you see some of the compliance certifications that we've gotten. You see there FedRAMP, PCI, HIPAA. So we are constantly monitoring our environment and making sure that we are compliant with the majority of certifications that are out there. So the solutions themselves. So now we're going from the abstract of data and what we do with it. Now we're going to start layering in the solutions that we offer, the solutions themselves. So on the left-hand side, we have audit and compliance. This is a critical part of it, because just by giving data itself doesn't really reduce the amount of time to come up with compliance reports, etc. So built in, out of the box, we have compliance reports that can pull the data from your environment when you set up your collectors, and we can provide rapid time to value for audits. Right? No one likes to get audited, but it's a nature of the beast. We have to deal with it on a regular basis. So our audit and compliance solutions gives us the data that we need in the format that we want, so we can go ahead and be compliant to the different certifications that we need to be responsible for. The next level in is security monitoring and analytics. And I did a session this morning at 6:30 Central Time, and that was a 1-hour session. We have it again tomorrow morning. And this is the basic technology for monitoring analytics. This is what we call continuous intelligence. So in here, we have the capability of a very elaborate search engine and a search capability. So we can go in there and create specific custom policies, or you can use out-of-the-box applications from Sumo and out-of-the-box searches for the data. And you can create your own dashboards, etc. So with that, we start getting into things like threat feed integration. One of the solutions that we have built into our SIP product is the CrowdStrike intelligence feed. So not only are we pulling in your data, we can leverage third-party analytics coming in, so we can marry what we get out of your environment from records and reports and logs, and compare that with our rules against the different security feeds that we have coming in. The third one over is Cloud SIEM, and that's what we're going to be talking about today, right? So if you think about this, we've gone from raw data with very little massaging to it, and that's the audit compliance. We pull it in, we do some more intelligence with it, we do some analytics, we do things like reducing the amount of logs, we do a consolidation and grooming of the data, and that's the cloud security monitoring analytics. And now with Cloud SIEM, we're actually taking that information from our SIP product and actually combining and doing intelligence and connecting the dots of what would have been discrete components or discrete logs or discrete incidents, and pulling them together into what we call insights. So we actually start getting into a workflow. So and we'll get into this when we look at the screen itself. We're taking massive amount of data on the left, and we're moving it through the different levels of parsing in our data. And the goal is, as we move to the very right-hand side of this, is if the customer has gone with a cloud SOAR environment, this is actually providing automation and playbooks. So we take the intelligence of our Cloud SIEM environment, where we have these insights, and we'll talk about them, and now we can use those insights with Cloud SOAR and actually create playbooks. So this is the family of the security solutions from Sumo, but today we're going to be really talking primarily around the Cloud SIEM solution. Again, remember, any questions you have, please post them in the chat. We got folks ready to jump on those. So please throw your questions in that direction. So Cloud SIEM, it was born and built in the cloud. You see it on the right-hand side here, and it's a unique interface. We actually worked with third-party gaming engineers, developers, to create the interface itself. Because if our analysts are going to be using this all the time, we have to come up with unique ways for our engineers, our analysts, to see the data, to see what the problem is, and to interact with it. It can't be cumbersome. It has to be very, very intuitive, and it has to be almost fun to use. And you know, it's kind of corny to say that the interface is fun, but when we get into that, you will hopefully experience the same thing. So basically, it's focused on the security events themselves. Again, we're combining and grooming the data as it comes out of the feeds from your organization. and pulling that together into what we call insights. And we'll talk about that in a second. It correlates the information, right? So one of the problems we have today is for every security threat, we have a solution, right? We have endpoint, we have email, we have IPS, we got firewall. We have all of these point solutions, and almost to the point where our analysts are almost swiveling constantly between screen and screen and screen, right? So we want to give them one location to see the data, to interact with the data, and then if they need to, they can actually go from there and take action. We'll talk about that in the labs themselves. We actually match our alerts to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So the reason why we do this is when we're talking about security and we're talking about this level of importance to all of our environments, we have to try to come up with a common language. If I call something security, a certain type or certain level, if everybody's following the same MITRE ATT&CK framework, when you hire new people in, right, it's not a lot of retraining. It allows us to provide value a lot quicker, so we're not recreating the wheel and not making a better mousetrap. We're following a MITRE ATT&CK framework. And then when you're actually doing investigations, you don't need to sit there and try to figure out what do we mean by a certain tag or a certain level of data, right? It goes back to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So we take that information, as I said, we cluster them together. So basically connecting the dots. So if we have certain level of alerts coming in or events coming in or records coming in, and by themselves, they probably aren't enough to trip that wire that says, hey, something's going on, because we're clustering these together as a campaign, right? As these things working together, we actually can find the needle in the haystack. All right. So what does this really do? From a value point of view, this is one of the evals that we did over a 45-day eval, and these are the real numbers from the customer. We can't tell the customer name because we're not allowed to. Over 10 billion records were coming in, right? So you imagine that's you can't hire your way out of that hole. You can't just put bigger pipes in to get out of that hole. That's a massive amount of records. And what you don't want to do is pick and choose the records you want to bring in, because you want to be able to base your intelligence and your security posture and your security actions on all the data that is needed. So if you have to sit there and artificially remove things that could have helped complete the puzzle, then you're not going to get the value out that you expect, right? So 10 billion records were coming in. We take those records and we modify, and we'll go through the process. We map those to the different aspects and correlation events or correlation items within our environment, and we take those 10 billion records, and that comes down to 9.8 million signals. All right. So now 9.8 signals versus 10 billion, that's a massive improvement, but still the thought of even looking at or trying to look at over a 45-day period close to 10 million signals is unachievable. So what happens now is, as an analyst, you're prioritizing and you're starting from the top down, and you may stay ahead of the curve a little bit, but you're not getting to all of the events and all of the signals that you would want to, because you just don't have enough time, you don't have enough bodies. So we take those signals, and this is where Sumo secret sauce starts coming in. We actually combine those signals and connect the dots and curate that information down into what we call insights. And these, again, actually real numbers. So just the orders of magnitude difference between 10 billion records and handing off to the customer 175 insights that they're going to look at over 45 days. Now they have the ability to get their arms around the problem. So of those 175 insights, because now I can actually take the time and look at them, 95, no action required. So maybe it was an insight that was automatically quarantined. Maybe it's an end station that got quarantined already, so you don't need to do anything. Or maybe it was something on your email side of the house. Maybe it's like Proofpoint or Cisco, and you block that sender coming in, so there's nothing really you need to do anymore, right? Maybe it's a little bit dated information coming in or the attempt coming in. So there's going to be a level of insights that no action is required. And in this case, 95 of those got peeled off. Now I have the luxury of looking at the false positives and the real events. 15 of these were false positives. Now, 15 out of 175, you may be thinking, yeah, that's a lot of wasted time. But remember, I'm looking at 175 insights that could have been 9.8 million signals, right? So now I have the luxury of looking at my data coming in and saying, yep, this is a false positive. I can mark it as a false positive, so I can actually tune my environment over time so I don't get bothered with those in the future. But I peel those off. Now I got 65 incidents that this SOC this SOC had to deal with. So that's an amazing level of value, an amazing level of noise reduction that our customers enjoy. So how does this work? So first step is on the SIP side, we actually are pulling in your data. So the same process that we use today for setting up collectors and sources into your environment, we use roughly the same process. So based on the ingestion that's already in place from the SIP side of the house, we're taking that information in a collection and we ingest that and create messages. So it's just basically a normalization of the data coming in and parsing it, getting it ready for the next level. The next level are records. So here we have an accumulation of all the security relevant data. And what we're trying to do now is parse that down to data that I want to or need to look at. And we map that to the naming conventions and the tags we have within our environment. So we're looking at things like IP address and URL and domains, and we're mapping the raw information coming out of messages into these records, right? So remember, on the upper right-hand side, my records, it's still massive. I'm still got 10 billion records coming in at that point. I'm using the sample from before. The next level in is I now take those records and I map them against the rules. Now we have over 700 pre-built rules. Now I'm taking the information and I'm parsing these records against the rules and mapping them to what we call entities, right? So an entity is a unique identifier for something. It could be an identity, could be a domain. Identity could be an IP address. An identity could be a username. So we're trying to map the records and the information coming in. We combine the rules and the entities, and what comes out of that is what we call our insights. So we take those signals that were created in the previous level, we cross-correlate them and connect the dots. I like using that, and we come up with insights. Insight is a campaign, right? So many times attackers today, they're not using one or two different techniques. They're using a series of techniques to get their malicious intent across into your environment. Maybe it starts with a phishing attack, right? Or maybe it starts with a drive-by URL within an email that somebody clicked on, and now the web application firewall is looking at going, okay, that was somewhat of a suspect URL, and the email was suspect, but I'm going to allow it anyway. And maybe now it's a download to an end station. So each one of those unique entities by themselves, or those unique actions by themselves, probably weren't picked up on. But because I'm connecting all these through, or connecting these all together over a rolling 2-week window, we actually come up with insights. Make sense? We're doing good? Of course, everybody's on mute, so I always ask you a question. So yeah, I can take no noise is good noise, right? All right. Of course, I just talked through all my animations, so we'll just go to the end of that. So now we're going to start getting into the lab. So in the lab itself, you're going to go, this is where we start getting interactive. So everybody have a browser up and going. You want to go to service.sumologic.com, and you're going to go in there and use training, the plus sign, analyst, and then a 3-digit number. So when you start logging in, if you could throw in your 3-digit number that you're using, can you throw that into the chat so we kind of keep track of who's coming in and who's been able to log in? So go ahead, I see a 388. I'm going to use for mine 565 because I was born in May in 1965, so I just use that one. It's easy for me to remember in my old age. The password, now this is going to change. So at the end of the month, we're going to actually get a new password set up. Is there a lab PDF? 1 second here. I thought that was posted.
There is not a lab PDF for this class.
Let's
There's
see.
a helper guide and the instructor guide, but that's for us, not
Okay.
for students.
So no, there's no lab PDF. Sorry about that. It's very straightforward. There's not a lot of lab step-by-step. So if you've taken an earlier course with us where you're actually creating a search, right, and you're actually doing, we're not going to be doing that. We don't really need a lab guide, which is an indication of our interface, right? We don't really need to have a lab interface for our environment because it's pretty simple to use. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. So when you first log in, you're going to land on this screen, all right? On the lower left-hand side, if you don't see the black box on the left, click on, people used to say it's a hamburger. That's a pretty squash-looking hamburger. The 3 dashed lines, click on that. Scroll to the bottom. You see training analyst. I lied. I put in 455, so I guess I fat-fingered when I logged in. And above that, you're going to log into the CloudSIM, or you're going to click on CloudSIM Enterprise. So what does this mean? So from a RBAC point of view and looking at roles and who can access and what they're doing, this leverages the user management and the administration of our base Sumo product itself. So go ahead and click on the SIM Enterprise. Now this is a live environment, so this is not a canned screen, so it's going to take a couple seconds to come up. And we're going to walk through the interface itself. So I'm going to hold for a second, and I'm going to do the inverse. If you don't have a HUD screen like this on your screen, put something in the chat. If you do, don't do anything. So I'm looking for the negative here. So if anybody's having issues at all, please throw it in the chat. I'll give it a minute or two, and we'll go on to the next section. Okay, good to see. Everything's running clean. Happy. Okay. So this is the HUD, right? It's not, you can tell this was created by somebody who is not in the security space or not in the old basic logs and reports, right? And we actually created this. We used one of the engineers or the service from, I don't know if there's any geeks out there, but I played this game, World of Warcraft. So if any of you guys play World of Warcraft and the Blizzard interface, guess what? This looks pretty similar, the color schemes, etc. So we have across the top the Sumo button on the upper left-hand side that will always get you back to the HUD display. If you want to search for a specific insight or something unique that you want to take a look at, you can type it in the search area. Back on the HUD. We talked about insights, signals, and entities and records, right? Remember that the fidelity funnel, the massive reduction of records coming in and how we parse those into signals and into insights. There's different ways of accessing them. You can get at them at the top here. You can see insights, signals, entities, records. If you wanted to take a look at, we're not going to go into depth here, but if you take I believe either the foundation or the administration class or both of them, you're going to go in and look at creating rules, rule tuning, custom insights, etc. But we're not going to do that in this class. That's a much deeper conversation. As my working way across the help, right? If I drop down here, I have an announcement. So that little red icon saying, hey, I have an announcement I haven't looked at yet. If I want to look at the API documentation or the documentation itself, right? This is the help environment. If you want to pivot back over to SIP, you go to the switch apps and you can go back there as well. All right, so that's across the top. And I like to look at this in three, right? On the left-hand side, the middle, and the right. So the left-hand side gives us an indication, and if you do the drop down, you can go by certain days and times. Now, don't worry about what we're seeing right now. So one of the things, because our training rig is, I call it a mosh pit, we have a lot of people at Insight going in here and making changes and doing things that your guys going to do in your area or when you get your hands on. So don't worry about if this looks a little strange. But on the outside ring, this deep blue circle around the outside, these are the number of records that are coming in. So in a 2-day period, I have 1 million records that have been ingested and sent into my SIM environment. So if I look at this, it's a ring. So as you go from the top and you go clockwise, it progresses over a period of time. So we have 926, 927, 928, 928, and I have 2 days. Okay, so that makes sense. We have an indication of the change since the last time. So on a rolling average, I'm seeing a 1% decrease on a rolling average of 2 days of records, right? It gives me an indication. So a small number, nothing to worry about. But what happens if I come in here and I see a big number, either up or down? Well, that's something I got to take a look at. The next piece in here are the signals. Now remember, the signals is I've taken the raw records, I've parsed them with the different conversions that I want, and I've taken 1 million records and created 8,000 signals. And at the end is 14 insights. Okay, so on the upper left-hand side, we have the digits. In the ring itself, the outside blue is the records, or are the records. The middle ring are the signals, and we're seeing this kind of strange stuff going on here. So this is just because we're it's almost like graphicals. If I go around it, it does change a little bit, but this is the signals coming in. And these triangles, now this is where the eye is drawn to when I look at this screen, right? It's a heads up, it's a display. So we're the bad guys, right? So if you old computer games, right? A red triangle is usually a bad guy you want to go after. A green is something that's handled, no problem at all. Yellow is questionable. So if I look at these, I can hover over the top of any one of these and look at a high level of what's going on, right? So I can interact with my HUD by clicking on the triangles if I want to. If I go to the left again, insights by status. So right now I have 10 insights that are brand new that no one has touched or marked as touched. I have 1 in progress. We have the capability of having a common bucket or a custom bucket, excuse me. So we're not using it today, but there could be a custom if you wanted to. And there's 3 that are closed. So I could interact with them over on this area as well. Lower left-hand side is just a chart over time what's been going on. We've already talked about the middle. The right-hand side is it's going to pop up the most recent insight, and you can go in here and actually just manage and go through that most recent insight. Lower right-hand side is pretty much the running log of what's been going on in the environment and who's done what, right? So this was Insight IP with malicious behavior. It was updated, changed to new. Insight behavior, updated, changed to new. So what I did prior to the class is I grabbed a couple of these and moved them out of the closed environment and put them into the new, so you guys would have some more stuff in the new space. So that's the basic HUD, right? So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go into Insights. So if you click on Insights, it's going to pull up all insights. Now, there's 2 different ways we can look at this. We can look at them linearly, top down, line by line, right? So I have the data was created, the time. Dwell time is how long has it been from the first, remember, because we're combining multiple signals into an insight. So if I look at when the first signal was reported to the point where it was raised to the level of an insight, that's how long this threat has been living in your environment. The insight name, and we can select that if we want to. External IP address hitting a Cisco firewall. So we just get some basic information. Training analyst, who's it been assigned to? So this has been assigned to 008. The severity. So what we look at for severity is the aggregation of the threat level of the signals that build it, right? So each signal, we'll go to signals for a second. These are the raw signals coming in. Each signal, and these can be customized, get assigned a certain severity. And these are the rules that we have in our environment. We update them on a regular basis. A lot of our customers don't touch them. A lot of our customers don't modify or tune them, but you can if you want to. So a severity of 1, obviously, is very, very low. But if I add the signals together that make up an insight, if it ever gets to 12 or higher, then it's going to populate and say it's a high severity. You need to take a look at it. So that's on a rolling 2-week window. All right. The entity, right? So this is the entity. So remember I said entities before were things like a user ID or an email address or an IP or a domain, etc. So the entity that is the pivot point for this insight on this one is called Rico Dynamite, right? And on the right gives you some indication of a map, right? So that's one way of looking at it. And here's our MITRE ATT&CK framework, the tactics and techniques that have been assigned to this. The other way of looking at these is the board method, right? So if you're used to using a board method, here's the same thing. Now, what's cool about the board method is you can just drag and drop a card into the different categories. So maybe you're an analyst, you come in, you're going to grab this top one, and you want to own this. So I'm going to take it, I'm going to slide it over to in progress, give it a second to update, and in here, if I select it, I can go in there and assign it to somebody, right? So right now it's assigned already to training 008. If I click on the down arrow, now if you do this, it does take a second or two to pull the data for the different users, but it is pulling from the user identity service that you've integrated with our environment, Active Directory, AWS, whatever, right? So you can actually assign these to different individuals. If I scroll into here, we start getting some more information about it itself. If I click on the firewall high severity, we start getting more information. So here's the metadata that got pulled in, right? So the vendor was Amazon AWS, it was product of network firewall, and it was an alert, right? So here we start seeing the raw metadata. And on the right-hand side, we start seeing some more information about it. If I scroll down a little bit more, we start getting some more of the detailed information. This is the parsing that we do of the information coming in. All right, so let's go back out to Insights. And the one we want to take a look at is I want to do a filter up here. So if you're in your environment, a couple of things. So you go to your Insights. I like to work out of the combine board method. By default, most likely status is not closed. So you probably want to open up the closed ones. Again, this is a training environment, so a lot of people are messing around. All right, so I just want to see everything, right? So new, in progress. Again, we could have a custom one. We have a filler right now for that, but we could have a custom one. So maybe this is your Sev1 or whatever. Right? You can have your own queue for maybe your elite SOC analyst and the ones that are closed. So I can go in here at the top and under filter, I can go in here and say, you know what? I want to look for name is, and I cheated. I'm going to go ahead and paste. Persistence with execution and initial access. So I want you to do this in your environment. So go to Insights, go to Filter, do that again. So I go to Filter, I come down and filter, I go to the name because I want to look for a specific one that has good, juicy information for our class here. I want to say name is or contains. I'm going to go ahead with is, and I'm going to go ahead and use the one that has been pulled out of for the class. Persistence with execution and initial access. Make sure that over here on the right-hand side that the closed is no longer selected, right? So you want all of them because previous classes could have moved this over into the other area. So again, name is, I'm going to paste mine in there and you hit enter. So we get a bunch of them in here. All right. Again, this is a training environment, so this is not reality. We have them all over the place. So you can go ahead and grab one of these on the upper left-hand side. I'm going to look at Insight 394. Now, the insights are numbered specific to your organization. So if I'm looking at Insight 394 and you're in a different organization than I'm in, you're not going to see 394 being the same thing, right? So if you're jumping back and forth, or maybe you've done a class in the past and you're coming back in, you're like, well, wait a minute, that's not the same insight. Insights are tagged with a unique identifier for the organization that this is managing. So I'm going to go ahead here and click on persistence with execution and initial access. Now, what are the building blocks for this? All right, so the graph gives us a good indication of the different signals that built this insight, right? So on the left-hand side, well, we got a threat intel map. So based on the IP address, the identity, that IP address that we're connecting against, we had a hit under my threat intel, and that's the purple icon here. As you move across, you have all the different signals. Now, again, we have, I think, 6 signals that built this together. So I got 1, 2, I got 2 bubbled up together here. So that, what, 2, 4, 5, so there's the 6. So this is the timeline of the attack. Now I can scroll down in here and see what's going on. Well, first of all, there was a threat intel IP address matched. Scrolling a little bit further, my checkpoint firewall said, hey, malicious file allowed through the environment, right? So my firewall scanned it for deep analysis, and it was a malicious file itself. Now, by itself, it only had a SEV3. So that's what I was saying before. By themselves, the attackers want to go low and slow. They want to come in under the radar, and they want to do a series of things under the radar so you don't notice it, but their end goal is their malicious intent. So that's why we have to connect these things together into insights. It tells me action while it was a detection, what port it was going across, IP, IPv6, source IP address, etc. I keep scrolling down through here, and if I go a little bit further, here's my CrowdStrike information. I have a suspicious HTTP user agent. And at the very bottom, we have a proof point targeted attack protection. So it's a phishing attack. So what can I do here? Well, I have all of the different pieces, and I can go to any one of these and take action on the unique entity that is recording it, right? I can go to a firewall, I can block it, I can go to email, I can block it, etc. Again, we're trying to pull all of the actions together in one location. So if I go to my proof point tap, on the right-hand side, we have the image of those dots together. If I select that, these are the things I can do. Well, I can do a search just on keywords. So if I'm having an overall phishing attack protection issue in my environment, I can click on that, and it's going to show me all of the attacks that Proofpoint Tap picked up, right? Or I can add it to a match list, right? I can use a match list later on to actually do some more filtering and parsing. On the right-hand side, if you click on that dash to a plus, it basically just collapses the different pieces, okay? So here's all of the different signals that built that insight. And on the left-hand side, I can close the insight if I want to, or I can take action. And this can be customized, but out of the box, it comes with a lot of integrations, right? So I can maybe send it to Misto, or with our new Cloud SOAR, actually, I can even see it in here. We can actually integrate this with our SOAR environment. I can send it to Phantom. I can send it to PagerDuty. I can send an alert to Microsoft Teams, ServiceNow, Slack, etc. So what's the benefit of this? Remember, we've gone from a massive amount of signals, records, into a smaller amount of signals to a campaign that I need to worry about. I could then use my interface to actually look at that and say, hey, what's going on? What was the event? What was the attack? And try to figure out what's going on. And then you can take action on it. Any questions at all? All right, so we got 10 minutes. So what I want you to do is just kind of log in and check other ones out, right? So depending, again, you're not going to break anything. And if you do break something, don't worry about it. Go into an insight, pull up a list and see which one that maybe looks interesting to you, and see. What I like to do, especially when I'm messing around like this, is look for one that has multiple signals, right? So if I go in here, there's one with 5 signals, 4 signals. Now I can go ahead, let me turn off the closed. So now this is raw everything. There's no filter blocking it, and it's not saying just show me everything but closed. On the right-hand side, I can say show me by event time, created, confidence, severity. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on severity, excuse me, and I'm gonna organize, filter this by severity. So there's another way of looking at it. Most likely, if you're a SOC analyst, you're probably going to come in and make sure the severity is what you've sorted by. So I'm going to go ahead and look at credential access. Now, this is a common problem these days because as we move more and more folks to the cloud, Well, it's easier for us, right? So we're using these cloud services, but it's also easier for our attackers because now it's like a watering hole, right? So if we're all coming to AWS and using their authentication services, it makes it somewhat easier, not completely easy, but somewhat easier for the attackers because it's a known entity. And one of the major problems we have, we all have known about this, is credential access or credential compromise. So I'm going to click on Insight 3. And we have pretty much 3 of them all stacked up together here. So if I scroll down, well, AWS guard duty, well, this was a pen test. So this is what I was saying before, no action needed. Well, this was my pen test team using Kali Linux and doing some analysis in there. So remember before I said you may have a series of insights that are no action needed. This is an example of no action needed. So you guys take a couple minutes, look around, access some insights, see what you think. And if you have any questions at all, or you want to talk through any of this, just go ahead and come off mute. There's a small enough group here. We can come off mute or just post your question to the chat. So you guys are doing this. I just want to point out again, the clustering, right? So this is just a graphical representation of what I said before. If I look at the severity points here, severities of 3s and 4s, maybe it's not high enough to get my attention, but with clustering, I've combined all those together to a 15. Now, because we're looking at a rolling 2-week total, 15 is above the 12. This is, you can customize this. You can set it higher or lower if you want. This is when we fire an insight. We already did most of this in the live walkthrough, so I'm going to put the screen up of what we did, but this is a rough idea. You start from your highest priority or whatever you want to start with. Maybe your specialty in your environment on the SOC is email, right? So you want to see all of the email events and alerts that had, in this case, proof point is what we're feeding into it. Show me all the alerts that have proof point as one of the signals, and now I can start attacking it that way, right? So different ways you can skin the cat here. Then based on that, you look at each one of the signals within that insight, make decisions, take action, assign it, etc. Look at all the detailed information. We looked at the URLs. We looked at what was the action that was taken. You look at the different signals. You make some level of decision, right? So conclusion would be, well, this employee seems to be getting hit with phishing attacks, so maybe I need to do a better job in educating our end users not to click on links that they're not 1,000% sure of. Then you take actions, and this is customizable. We're showing here, a custom of email it to the SOC team, and then you update the status. So we got 8 minutes more. This is just what, these slides are just what we just went through. So we will stay on the line. We have 8 minutes more. Hopefully you're logging into the HUD and checking things out. Again, you can't break anything, so go ahead and take a look. So the way this usually happens when it's a different level of class, we set a timer on the lower right-hand side, and basically you have 7 minutes to go from insight to action, and then we say go, right? But we're not going to do that to you folks. Even I do have 7 minutes left. I timed that nice. 7 minutes to the end of the class. So I'm going to go ahead back to my interface here, just next steps, all right? So if I go back, you can actually look in here and see, a second here. Here we go. So if you go back to the main portal, you go to the home screen and go to certifications. You can get further certifications on CloudSIM. You can read more docs, right? Our online docs are extremely thorough if you want to. So here are some of if you want to learn more. And also, if you look at the calendar, we have a whole bunch of certifications and workshops coming up. So here are the different classes. We have a Cert Jam coming up in India, one in Japan, New York, etc. So if you go to the sumologic.com/learn/training, you'll get the list of the upcoming classes. Any questions at all? So the question I had, and Anna, if you can help me with this one, if an
Yeah.
insight is closed as a false positive or no action needed, what happens? Anna, your mute's on.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
All right. So when you close an insight, if you say false positive, then the CSE machine learning engine learns from that. And so if a bunch of Sumo customers all said that this one phishing link was a false positive, then you're less likely to have that one particular phishing link, for example, come up as a high severity thing in the future. So if you have just enough false positives or no action, it'll eventually learn like, oh yeah, this is the pen testing team. This is not a real phishing link. It learns. So you're teaching the system every time you close an insight.
So also with our environment, and I didn't see it in the training organization, but global confidence or confidence scores, doesn't that tie into that?
Yeah, it does. But in terms of resetting the counter, it is a rolling severity score. So if I close the insight, but then more things come in for that same entity, then you'll get a new insight. But only if there's more things for that entity.
Yeah, but that makes sense though. If you close it and at that point it was nothing to go on, but other things happen and get pulled into the same insight, what was a low priority, nothing to do here may bubble up pretty quickly into something that's serious. So we don't want to just blow it all out of the water. We want to still maintain visibility into what's going on for those insights. And that's why we have that rolling 2-week counter.
And that 2 weeks is customizable, and the severity score of 12 is customizable. So if you want fewer insights or a longer time range or whatever, you can tweak all that. Does that answer your question, Corey? All right, great.
All right. All right, folks. 3 more minutes.
Can you include backlinks and signals to the original sources? Yeah. Do you want to demo that, Scott, or do you want me to?
If you could, because I don't know the answer to that one.
Yeah, let me
Stop sharing.
Get into the environment, share my screen.
Yep, gotcha.
All right. So if I log in, go to CSE, and I go to whatever insight, I'll go to this one. So I'm in this insight. Let me make my screen a little bigger. Everyone can see this, right?
Looks
so good. Here are the signals that are in that insight. I can click into any of them and it'll give me more information. And then you can click into, you can go, looking at that 80 risk guard duty, and this tells you everything about that entity. So basically every insight's homepage has every signal. Let's refresh this.
But Jeff, what do you mean by backlinks? Or Anna, do you know what that? What
well, I'm assuming that by backlinks he's meaning this, where you can go and search deeper. You can do these context actions and search for records for this particular entity.
Close. So what I was actually curious about is for a guard duty signal, for instance, or a CrowdStrike signal, or will there be a link back into the GuardDuty finding in the AWS console or into the CrowdStrike detection in the CrowdStrike portal?
There might be. So there's a bunch of integrations. Like there's so many integrations, I'm not even familiar with all of them. But you
under,
there's like
under the actions, those can be customized, and if you click on an entity itself, you can go to one of the
yeah. So if I click to this entity, like right now it's giving me the action to add it to a match list or a suppress list or do a keyword search for it. But there's other ones too. Like if I click into this one, let's just search for records, but they have different integrations for different ones.
But those can be customized, can't they?
Yeah, they can be customized, and then you can immediately make a Jira ticket out of this action or whatever. So if there is like AWS, there might be some integration for that. I'm not aware of it, but it wouldn't surprise me. There's also a bunch of API stuff that you can do. So you can go really deep with this stuff.
And the open API is fully documented. So if you go to the help,
yeah,
the second one down.
Oh yeah, the API documentation.
If you want to.
Yeah, so if you wanted to make that thing that you want, sure you could. Yeah, it would probably be a context. Yeah, it'd probably be a context action that you want. So you don't want an action, you want a context action, which is here. So this one, Google Web Search. I don't see one for AWS or GuardDuty.
No, but it has to be, because in our actions we can go and say, you know what, take this URL or take this entity and go query VirusTotal or go query Cisco's threat intelligence, right? So there are ways that we can take the data that you have in front of you and pivot and go back to another interface. We just don't have it right now in front of you.
Yeah.
So if you want more details than that, we actually probably cover a little more depth in the administration and the foundation class for CloudSIM.
Yeah, it's talked about a little bit in the admin class, but that is a pretty in-depth question. But I'm sure that your account rep can help you with that integration.
So the answer is yes.
Yeah, the answer is yes. It's just I don't know how to do it.
Cool, thank you.
Well, okay, folks, thank you for giving us the time. Please take advantage of the rest of the great assets we have coming out as part of Illuminate. There are other classes, there are other just presentations. The kickoff, I think, is tomorrow morning, so you get the keynote, etc. And thank you so much for your interest in Sumo, and thank you for your time.